Some stories cut deep because they remind us of how far hate can go when it festers inside someone's heart. This is one of those stories. A quiet suburban town, a frail old woman, and a hard-working care worker. What happens between them will send shivers down your spine. Welcome to Black Community Stories. Make sure you like and subscribe for your top-notch stories. The morning had started out normal in Brookfield, a calm American town with trimmed lawns, barking dogs behind white fences, and neighbors waving from their driveways. Inside a small, creaky house at the corner of Maple Avenue, 79-year-old Mrs. Margaret Collins sat by her kitchen table. Her hands trembled slightly as she stirred her coffee, but her sharp blue eyes were steady, watchful, cold. Across from her stood Denise Walker, her 32-year-old care worker. Denise was dressed simply in blue scrubs, her hair tied neatly back. She had been working for Margaret for only 6 months, but already she had learned to swallow insults and cruel remarks that came almost daily. Margaret always found something nasty to say, about Denise's skin, about her voice, even about the food she cooked. But Denise endured it. She needed the job to support her daughter. That morning, Margaret had asked Denise to drive her car to the grocery store. "Get me the good bread, the rye one. Don't come back with that cheap trash you people eat," she said with a sneer. Denise, keeping her patience, nodded quietly and grabbed the car keys. As Denise stepped out of the front door and headed for the old Buick parked in the driveway, Margaret's lips curled into a sly grin. She reached for the cordless phone sitting on the counter, her hands steady now. Punching in 3 digits, she lifted the receiver to her ear. 911, what's your emergency? The operator's calm voice asked. "This is Margaret Collins," she said, injecting fear into her voice. "My car has just been stolen. The girl, my care worker. She took it. She's driving off with it right now. Please hurry." She hung up, her heart racing not from guilt, but from satisfaction. For months, she had wanted a way to get rid of Denise. Today, she thought, she had found it. Meanwhile, Denise drove down Maple Avenue, humming softly to herself, unaware of the storm that was about to break. The grocery list sat on the passenger seat, along with Margaret's handbag, which she had carelessly left behind. Denise thought of her little girl back home, who loved when she brought home a pack of strawberries as a treat. Back at the Collins house, Margaret peeked through the curtains, watching the street. Soon enough, 2 squad cars pulled up, lights flashing. She straightened her cardigan, put on her best fragile old lady face and hurried outside to meet them. "Officers," she cried, pointing down the street though Denise was long gone. "She stole my car. I trusted her, and she took advantage of me. I'm afraid of what she'll do next." The 2 officers, both young men, exchanged quick looks. One scribbled in his notepad while the other tried to calm Margaret down. "Ma'am, we'll locate the vehicle. Do you know the direction she headed?" "She went toward Main Street," Margaret said confidently. "That way." Inside her mind, Margaret savored every word. She pictured Denise being stopped, handcuffed, humiliated. She wanted her out of her life permanently, and if it meant Denise getting locked up, so be it. The officers got back into their cars, radios buzzing with chatter. Within minutes, the alert went out across town. Be on the lookout for a tan Buick Regal, driven by a black female in her early 30s, suspected vehicle theft. Denise, still humming and unaware, pulled into the busy grocery store parking lot. She parked neatly, turned off the engine and grabbed the list. She had no idea that police cruisers were already circling nearby, scanning every lot, every car, every driver. She pushed a cart inside, moving quickly through the aisles. Milk, bread, eggs, Margaret's rye loaf. She thought of the time and hurried. She didn't want Margaret to complain about her being late. But outside, in the lot, a police cruiser slowed down, headlights fixed on the tan Buick sitting there. Before we dive in deeply, let us know in the comments what country or which city you're watching this story from. We'd love to know how far this story travels. The officers inside the cruiser exchanged a look as they rolled slowly past the Buick. One of them tapped the dash. "That's the car," he muttered. The other nodded, already reaching for the radio. "Dispatch, we've located the stolen vehicle at Brooks Market parking lot," the officer reported, requesting backup before we make contact. Static crackled before the dispatcher's voice replied, "Copy that. Proceed with caution." The officers parked 2 rows away, their eyes never leaving the Buick. Shoppers moved in and out of the store with carts, completely unaware of the quiet tension building in the lot. Inside, Denise was at the checkout line, bagging groceries with a polite smile. She handed over a $20 bill, thanked the cashier, and loaded everything back into her cart. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was a text from her daughter. "Mama, can you bring cookies too?" She smiled softly and typed back, "Next time, baby." Pushing the cart outside, she squinted at the bright afternoon sun. The air was crisp, the sky a clean blue. She unlocked the Buick, placed the bags in the back seat, and slid into the driver's seat. That's when the first cruiser swung sharply across the lane in front of her. Lights flashed, siren blared. Another cruiser pulled in behind, blocking her in. Denise froze. Her hands gripped the wheel. "What in the world?" she whispered. "Driver, step out of the vehicle," an officer shouted through a loudspeaker. Heads turned. Shoppers stopped mid-step, staring as if a drama had unfolded before their eyes. Denise blinked, confusion plastered on her face. "Step out of the car now," the voice ordered again, sharper this time. Heart pounding, Denise slowly raised her hands and pushed the door open. She stepped out, palms lifted high. "Officers, what's going on?" she called out, her voice trembling. The 2 policemen moved in quickly, guns drawn. One grabbed her by the arm and pulled her roughly toward the back of the car. The other shouted, "Hands behind your back." Denise felt cold metal clamp around her wrists. The handcuffs clicked shut. Her chest tightened with panic. "This is a mistake. I work for Mrs. Collins. This is her car. She asked me to—" "Save it for the station," one officer barked, cutting her off. The crowd whispered, cell phones raised, some recording the scene. A few shook their heads, muttering under their breath, while others looked eager for the spectacle. Denise felt eyes burn into her skin, shame, confusion, and fear, all tangled in her stomach. "Please," she begged, "check with her. She sent me to the store. I didn't steal anything." The younger officer sneered. "Lady, we got the call directly from her. Said you stole her car right out of her driveway." Denise's mind spun. Margaret. Margaret did this. She could picture her sitting smugly in her chair, enjoying the thought of this very moment. The police pushed Denise into the back of the cruiser, the cuffs digging into her wrists. She tried to steady her breathing, but her chest felt like it might burst. Through the window, She saw her cart of groceries abandoned in the lot, rolling slowly toward another car until someone caught it. Back at Margaret's house, the old woman was pouring herself another cup of coffee when the phone rang. She picked it up, her voice sweet as honey. "Yes," she said. "Mrs. Collins? This is Officer Ramirez. We have the suspect in custody. Car has been secured. You're safe now, ma'am." Margaret pressed a hand to her chest in false relief. "Oh, thank heavens. I was so frightened. Thank you, officer. Thank you." As she hung up, a smile crept across her face. She shuffled to the living room window and sat back in her armchair, satisfied. Meanwhile, at the police station, Denise was marched down a narrow hallway, her sneakers squeaking on the tiled floor. They guided her into a small interrogation room, gray walls, a metal table, 2 chairs. The cuffs were removed, but the door locked behind her with a sharp click. Denise sat there, her hands trembling on the table. She tried to swallow, but her throat was dry. She knew she was innocent. She knew this was Margaret's doing. But would anyone believe her? The door creaked open, and a tall detective with tired eyes walked in, a folder tucked under his arm. He sat down, flipped the folder open, and studied her. "Denise Walker," he said slowly, 32, care worker. "So tell me, why'd you steal the car?" Her heart sank. Denise leaned forward, her voice trembling but firm. "Detective, I didn't steal that car. I was asked to take it. Mrs. Collins, my employer, she gave me the keys. She told me to get groceries for her." The detective raised a brow, unimpressed. He tapped his pen against the folder. "That's not what she told us. Mrs. Collins said you took the car without permission. Said she watched you drive off while she stood helpless at the window." Denise shook her head quickly. "That's a lie. She asked me to go. Check her kitchen. You'll see the list she gave me." The detective scribbled something in his notepad, but his face stayed blank. Why would she lie about that? Denise hesitated, chewing her lip. Should she say it? Should she expose the racist comments, the venom Margaret spat at her every day? She looked into the detective's tired eyes, searching for a hint of understanding. "She doesn't like me," Denise finally whispered. "She said things to me. Hateful things. She wanted me gone, and this is her way of doing it." The detective leaned back in his chair, arms folded. For the first time, his expression softened a little. He studied her closely, as if trying to read something deeper. Meanwhile, outside the room, the officers who arrested Denise stood at the desk, exchanging low voices. "She didn't look like a thief," one muttered. "Groceries in the back seat, receipt still warm." "Yeah, but the old lady seemed real sure," the other replied. "And people like her, you don't doubt their word too easily." Back in the interrogation room, Denise placed her hands flat on the cold metal table. "Detective, please, call her again. Ask her what I bought. Ask her if she told me to get rye bread. She'll slip, I promise you." The detective paused, tapping his pen once more, then finally stood. "Wait here," he said, before leaving the room. Denise let out a shaky breath. Her shoulders slumped. She thought about her daughter again, her little girl waiting for her to come home that evening, maybe with those strawberries. The thought of her baby crying herself to sleep while she sat in a cell made Denise's chest ache. At the Collins house, Margaret had just finished her coffee when the phone rang again. She answered smoothly. "Mrs. Collins, this is Detective Harris," came the voice on the other end. "Just a few follow-up questions, ma'am." Margaret tightened her grip on the phone. She hadn't expected more questions. "Of course, Detective," she said sweetly. "Can you tell me again what happened? From the moment you saw your car taken." Margaret cleared her throat. She grabbed the keys without asking. I begged her not to go, but she laughed and just drove off. I was terrified. The detective's silence stretched for a moment. Then he asked casually, "Did she take anything else? Or just the car?" Margaret frowned. "Just the car? Not groceries, nothing like that," he pressed. Margaret hesitated, her mind scrambling. "No, not that I saw." Detective Harris made a note, then said, "All right, ma'am. Thank you for your time." When he hung up, his jaw tightened. The woman's story didn't line up. If Denise had just stolen the car, why were there bags of groceries neatly stacked inside it? Back at the station, he returned to the interrogation room. Denise's eyes searched his face as he walked in. "Well?" she asked softly. "She's holding firm," Harris said, but his voice betrayed doubt. "But her story doesn't add up." Denise leaned forward, desperation in her voice. "Check the store cameras. Check the receipt. I paid with her cash. Everything I bought was for her. You'll see." For the first time, Harris gave a small nod. "We'll look into it, but until then, you'll have to stay here." Denise felt her stomach twist. The gray walls pressed in around her. She rubbed her wrists where the cuffs had left red marks. She wasn't sure how much longer she could take this. Outside the station, night began to fall. The streetlights flickered on, casting long shadows over Brookfield. The town looked calm, but inside that station, a quiet battle for truth was just beginning. And back at Maple Avenue, Margaret Collins turned off her lights and drew the curtains tight, humming to herself as if nothing had happened. The cold hours dragged on inside the police station. Denise sat hunched in the metal chair, arms wrapped around herself. Every tick of the wall clock echoed like a hammer in her chest. She thought about her daughter. Did the babysitter know she'd be this late? How would she explain this nightmare if it got out? Detective Harris stepped back in with a small folder of papers. He dropped it on the table, sat down, and studied her quietly. "We checked the Buick," he began. "Groceries in the back seat, receipt still in the bag, all recent purchases." Denise lifted her chin, clinging to hope. "Exactly. That's proof. I wasn't stealing. I was doing my job." Harris nodded, though his expression stayed guarded. "We also called Brooks Market. Their manager is pulling the surveillance footage for us. If it shows you shopping calmly, paying, bagging the groceries, that'll help." For the first time since her arrest, Denise felt a sliver of relief. Still, her wrists ached from the cuffs earlier, and her heart hammered with fear. "Please," she whispered, "just let me call my daughter. She's waiting for me." The detective sighed. "One call. Make it quick." He slid a phone across the table. Denise's fingers shook as she dialed. When her daughter's little voice came through, she fought back tears, forcing herself to sound steady. "Baby, Mama's fine. I'll be a little late tonight, okay? Eat dinner with Miss Carla. I love you." "I love you too, Mama," the girl said softly. Denise hung up, swallowing hard. She wouldn't cry, not here. Meanwhile, in the observation room behind the glass, two younger officers watched the exchange. One of them frowned. "She doesn't look like a car thief to me." The other officer crossed his arms. "Maybe, but the old lady sounded real convincing." You don't make a false report at her age. Why would she risk that? The question hung in the air. Neither had an answer. Back at the Collins house, Margaret Collins sat in her recliner with the television humming in the background. She spooned sugar into her tea, the corner of her lips curling in satisfaction. To her, everything had gone according to plan. She pictured Denise sitting in a cold cell begging for mercy. That thought alone warmed her more than the tea. But then came a knock at the door. Margaret frowned, shuffled over, and opened it to find two uniformed officers standing on her porch. She immediately slipped back into her fragile act, her hand trembling against the doorknob. "Oh, officers," she said sweetly. "Is it safe now? Did you catch her?" The taller one cleared his throat. "Yes, ma'am. The suspect is in custody. But we need to ask you a few more questions. Do you mind if we step inside?" Margaret hesitated. Her mind raced. Why more questions? Hadn't she said enough? Still, she forced a smile and gestured them in. "Of course. Come in. Come in." The officers stepped into the living room. One pulled out a small notebook. "Ma'am, we just want to confirm. You said she grabbed the keys without your permission." "Yes, that's right," Margaret answered quickly. "And you didn't ask her to buy anything for you?" Margaret stiffened, her teacup clinking faintly on the saucer. "No," she said firmly. "I never asked her to do any shopping." The officer scribbled something down. "Interesting, because we found groceries in the car. Fresh bread, milk, eggs, all bagged. Looks like a shopping trip to us." Margaret forced a laugh, brittle and dry. She must have stopped along the way. Thieves do strange things sometimes. The officers exchanged a glance. One of them closed his notebook with a snap. "All right, ma'am. Thank you for your time." When they left, Margaret closed the door slowly, her pulse quickening. She realized she would need to be sharper if she wanted her story to stick. For the first time that night, a flicker of unease crept into her chest. Back at the station, Detective Harris returned with a thumb drive from Brooks Market. He slid it into the computer, and the screen lit up with grainy footage. There was Denise, pushing a cart, calmly picking up groceries, placing them on the belt, paying cash, smiling politely at the cashier. The room grew silent. One of the younger officers muttered under his breath, "That doesn't look like a thief to me." Detective Harris crossed his arms, eyes narrowing. "No, it looks like someone doing exactly what she was told to do." He turned to the others. "Keep her here for now. I'll pay Mrs. Collins another visit." Denise sat alone in the gray room, unaware of what was happening. She tapped her fingers nervously on the table, whispering a prayer under her breath. Outside, the night deepened. Brookfield looked peaceful, but beneath its quiet surface, truth and lies were colliding, and only one of them would survive the night. Detective Harris pulled into Maple Avenue just past 9 o'clock. The street was still, porch lights glowing faintly, sprinklers hissing in distant yards. He parked outside the Collins house and sat for a moment, staring at the dark windows. Something about the old woman's story gnawed at him. He rang the bell. After a pause, Margaret appeared, wrapped in a robe, her lips tightening when she saw him again. "Detective Harris," she said softly. "Is there a problem? I thought this was over." "Not quite," Harris replied, stepping inside after she reluctantly moved aside. He walked into the living room, scanning the shelves, the tidy coffee table, The kitchen door ajar with a notepad lying on the counter. He picked it up. A short grocery list stared back at him in shaky handwriting. Rye bread, milk, eggs. Harris held it up. Margaret froze. "Funny thing," he said, his voice even. "This list matches exactly what Denise bought tonight. Matches the bags in your car. Matches the receipt from Brooks Market." Margaret's throat bobbed. She forced a smile. She must have written that herself. She's clever, detective. Manipulative. Harris slipped the list into a plastic sleeve from his jacket pocket. "Or maybe you wrote it, and maybe you thought nobody would notice." Her face hardened. "Are you accusing me of lying?" "I'm saying your story doesn't fit the facts," Harris answered calmly. "The footage shows her shopping, paying with your cash. The receipt shows the same, and this list ties it all together." Margaret's mask cracked for the first time. Her lips trembled, her eyes darted towards the curtains, as if hoping for an escape. "That woman doesn't belong here," she hissed suddenly, her voice sharp, venom spilling through. "She walks into my home, into my life, acting like she's better than me. I won't have it. Not in my house, not in my car." Her words hung in the room like smoke. Harris stared at her, unflinching. "So you lied to us," he said finally. "You filed a false police report. Do you understand how serious that is, Mrs. Collins?" She straightened, gripping the back of her chair for support. "You'll believe her over me? Over a woman who's lived here her whole life?" Harris leaned closer, lowering his voice. "I'll believe the evidence. And the evidence says you tried to frame an innocent woman because of the color of her skin." Margaret's face drained of color. She sank into her chair, hands shaking, but said nothing. By the time Harris returned to the station, Denise was still sitting in the gray room, her eyes red from holding back tears. The door opened, and Harris walked in carrying a folder. "Denise," he said firmly, "you're free to go." She blinked. "What?" "We reviewed the footage. We found the list. Everything points to your innocence. You did exactly what you were told to do. Mrs. Collins lied." The words washed over her like cold water. Relief, anger, exhaustion, all of it crashed down at once. She covered her face with her hands and let out a shaky breath. Harris placed the folder on the table. "I'm sorry you went through this, but know this. We're not letting it slide." Minutes later, Denise stepped out of the station into the night air. The stars stretched overhead, the streets were quiet, and for the first time that evening, she could breathe. She pulled out her phone and dialed home. "Baby, Mama's coming home," she whispered. Meanwhile, back on Maple Avenue, squad cars pulled up outside the Collins house. Red and blue lights flashed across her windows as officers knocked on the door. Margaret shuffled to answer, her face pale as chalk. "Mrs. Collins," the officer said, "you're under arrest for filing a false police report." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. The neighbors peeked from behind their blinds as the frail woman was led out in handcuffs, her own trap closing in on her. The town would whisper about it for weeks. The wealthy old woman who tried to ruin her care worker's life, only to end up exposed. And Denise, though scarred by the night's ordeal, held her head high. She had been humiliated, doubted, and nearly broken, but the truth had survived. The end. Please like and subscribe for more rich stories like this. Comment below. Also, if you really loved this video and want to support the channel directly, you can hit that super thanks button below.